I got to get your take before, I think as Dennis alluded to, a lot of people need to shrink kind of what they're trying to accomplish. They start focusing on their own internal life plans.
Exactly.
And, there's a big difference between trying to study what's out there in the grand scheme of things versus what's going on in, I suppose, your own life.
Yeah, and this is going to happen in another few weeks, right? So this cycle is going to repeat itself. So what you really probably want to focus on is, as all of this is going on, where are you on your own life plan? You think about the first 20 years or so of your life, you're being supported by mom and dad, you're getting educated, then you start a career. And the last 20 years of your life, if you haven't planned right, hopefully you're not going to be on government support, to replace the parents' support in the first 20 years. But the idea is if you plan well, then you're going to be self-sufficient. You're going to be financially independent. And that would be helpful for everyone, because if you don't have to rely on society, then you're helping society, right? So that would be ideal. But you've got this window of time called your career that you've got to not only figure out how to buy a house, car, take care of your kids, raise them, fund college. Oh, and then all of a sudden your parents need help. So you've got all these pressures in this short period of time that you have to also accumulate assets for your own survival economically when you choose to retire someday. It's a whole different career where you're in charge.
This is why 5% of people are able to do all this, right?
Right. So think about, where are you at on that timeline of your life? Where are you at on your life plan? What's the next major transition that you're going to be coming up to? If it's marriage, if it's divorce, if it's a career change, if it's, eventually it's going to be some sort of health breakdown, right? As you get older, that's kind of what happens. And sometimes it's a memory issue, sometimes it's other health issues. But the idea is, down the road, sometime you're going to experience health issues. Now, what's interesting, you were asking about how's this shutdown working for you? We just got a notice from our health insurance company through Costco that they're going to terminate our plan on January 1, as per Obamacare. So the idea is, yes, I'm going to be affected. So as these things change, and you want to make sure you're protected along the way. So if your health insurance plan has to change, just go find another one. Hopefully that's going to work out.
Right.
Right. But the idea is, figure out where you're at, what's coming up next. And if you can figure out what the next major transition is, then you can be better prepared for it. So that's really what you need to focus on in the midst of all this plethora of chaos.
And changing your life or your health insurance is not major.
No.
I mean, it might have a few dollar effect one way or another.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is not, I think this is one thing that is important to get out there, is people will focus so much. Oh my goodness, my healthcare plan is going to change. And it's like the end of the world.
Right.
And, this huge focus on it, and people get all up in arms.
Yeah.
And in the reality, I think, is you think, okay, it's going to get canceled. It's going to take, what, an hour?
Yeah, right.
And maybe a few bucks one way or another.
Right.
But ultimately, we're not talking about as big of an individual problem, most likely, as a lot of people will give it attention.
Right. Right. And it's an important aspect. You need to have your protection.
Sure.
But, and you want to make sure, okay, when you do design that plan, for example, consider your resources. Can you go with a high deductible and a lower premium? Because maybe you can fund the first $2,000 of expenses. So design it in a way that, and same with your car insurance. If you can afford a high deductible or whatever, go with a plan.
Since nobody turns in anything for car insurance anyways, because then your thing goes, your plan goes up.
True. There's only really one insurance plan that actually is guaranteed to pay off.
What's that?
Life insurance.
Oh, there you go.
That's the ultimate transition, isn't it?
There you go. You got a plan for that one.
Well, that's probably the most major one out there, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, everybody buys it.
Well, what I'm saying is that we don't know when our last day is.
Right.
It could be tomorrow. It could be today. It could be 50 years from now. The idea is, when that happens, are you ready for that? Because until you're ready for that transition, you're really not ready to live. Right?
Now you're getting religious on me, I have a feeling, Glenn.
Well, I'm just saying.
We've gone from politics to religion. Next thing you know, we just need to find a bar and we can cut the whole conversation out.
Well, just remember, your life is just a vapor. It's here for a while. Napoleon gained the whole world, right?
Yeah.
And he left it behind.
Yeah.
So how are you going to be remembered in this life, right? So as you go, think about who impacted your life in terms of who you learned the most from regarding financial success, right? Or financial failure. So, for example, if we look at our parents, how did their situation work out? What did they do right? What did they do wrong? And how did it work out? Those types of things can help you to make better decisions, perhaps, for your own plan.
When you start, you bring up all these different transitions and learning from other people. When you start looking at a lot of people, they haven't necessarily planned very well for some of these transitions.
Right.
And I think in today's economy specifically, and I don't think it's as much in Seattle as other parts of the country, people are not looking at like a career change. I'm just trying to find a job.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are just trying to get to the next day or a week out or 6 months out.
Sure.
How do you help them get through things like this? Because sometimes that is the major transition is not necessarily preparing for death. It's preparing for next week.
Exactly. And you got to find a way to get further down the road in terms of have an emergency fund. Start as debt-free as possible, but that's not possible if you're going to school and then you got to go buy a house and you're going to buy a car and then you got credit cards out the gazoo. The idea is the more in debt you are, the worse it is. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
I mean, $16 trillion. How are we possibly going to grow out of that debt? It's going to take a long time. It's just with individuals as well. So if you can't avoid it, I mean, because sometimes people lose their job and they have nothing, so they've got to use other people's money. They've got to use credit cards. That's happened to me in my past. And, those situations are pretty tough. And when things turn around and you do get a job, you probably need to work on getting out of that debt because that's the only way you can become financially independent, right? If you don't owe other people money and then you can take all of your income and do what you need to with it or want to with it.
At some point, you have to get into it just to a baseline in order to start thinking about surplus.
Yes. And, it comes down to, okay, what are the needs versus wants? And don't get sidetracked. Again, go back to where are you at in your life? How much time do you have yet in your career? Or, what is it that you want to accomplish? Napoleon accomplished the whole world. That might not be your goal. If you just want to be financially independent and not dependent on somebody, you don't want to be a burden on family, right?
Right. And Napoleon just wanted to be taller, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
And he couldn't even accomplish that. Glen Thiessen joins us with Transition Planning Inc. Glen, so, when you start looking at all these major transitions that individuals have in their life, how do you see what's going on around us, what observations people have about the government, about $16 trillion in debt, about all these different things that you really can't comprehend.
No, it's quite overwhelming.
How do you help maybe people get from, point A to point B in their own lives and in some ways put blinders onto what's going on?
You have to do that at some point. You've got to focus on what your current situation is. You can look at your past and see, okay, this is what led up to where I'm at today. And sometimes it's out of your control. You can't help getting laid off. And you can't help it. You got disabled. Whatever. Things happen in life. But you got to assess where you're at today in terms of assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. And you've got to do the best you can with that to minimize the control that other people have over your life, like in terms of debt and so forth. If people are claiming over 50% of your income before you even receive it, that makes it really tough. So you've got to reclaim, as much of that as you can. It's tough to retire, for example, if you still have a mortgage. So how are you going to get rid of that? It takes a strategy. So assess where you're at today in terms of assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. And then let's work out a strategy to get you, down the road towards financial independence, even though all this other stuff is going on around us.
Talk to me a little bit. We just have about a minute left. Again, we're here with Glen Thiessen, Wealth Advisor with Transition Planning Inc. Talk to me about how you help people. I mean, most people aren't willing to really sacrifice. That's what I tend to see, because the government isn't willing to actually sacrifice anything. I mean, that seems to be a lot of the problem.
Right. And all I can do is help them to try to see a little bit further down the road. Let's play this out. Let's say that we continue to do as you are doing. Where will that lead? Is that really what you want in life? Let's play that out. Okay? Like, for example, if a person hasn't prepared for that time in life when they need long-term care, and they want to stay at home, but they haven't put any plans in place to allow that to happen. There's no resources. They don't have home health care, whatever. They are going to have to go to a place they did not want to go to, right? Because they didn't plan ahead. Let's play that out. let's see, is that really what you want in life? So that's all I can do. And if a person is not personally motivated to make the changes necessary to get them further down the road in financial success, I can't help them.
And that really, it comes down to that a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The motivation. How many plans, and we do have to go to break, but how many plans do you help people create that don't get executed? Is there a good percentage?
A lot. And it's sad because it can be so much better outcome.
Right. And it's tough to, you can bring a horse to water.
But you can't make them drink.
That's right, Glenn.